Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, that is Caleb, and today, oh my goodness, we're talking about a big Nebraska-Minnesota game, obviously talking about some of this Illinois game as well, breaking it all down, some big takeaways and some wild predictions, X factors, and keys to the game versus Minnesota. There's been obviously a lot of rumors flying around Nebraska this week about coaching decisions and stuff like that, so we have a lot to talk about today. Caleb, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing okay. The Illinois game was very disappointing. Obviously, you're winning the game, and then Casey Thompson goes down. It was a giant bummer.
It goes from like instant hope to like instant, like, this is over.
Yeah. We score, they get the ball back, we stop them, and we're going to go back and get a new drive. And you're like, we could go up 2 scores.
We start with the Illinois game and then heading into the Minnesota game and talking through all of that, the predictions and everything else. So, yeah, like you said, obviously the game was going really well. I mean, we were up 9-6 with the ball, and then Casey makes a bad decision. He shouldn't have tried to throw the ball. It gets picked off. He's hurt. And the game's, essentially over at that point, which is just crazy. But what were some of your thoughts? At least we can talk about kind of the first quarter or second quarter there, and then your thoughts on, like, let's start on the offensive side and just things you're learning about this team. Alante Brown, what else you got?
Yeah, I also want to make a mention of, remember Ramir Johnson's tweet? We could throw up here where he was, that dog in a cage where he's like, I'm not getting my playing time, and I should be starting. And then Casey Thompson puts it, and then he finally gets back out on the field, and he runs like a 20-yard route, and Casey doesn't get hurt if he catches this football, and we're not in that 3rd and 10 where Casey tries to extend the play. But no, Ramir Johnson drops the ball, 0 dog in him, from what the tweet is saying. It was a bummer. So yeah, I had mentioned that, like, you can't tweet that and then go out and get your shot and then just drop the ball.
I know, and then it completely turns the ties to the game. So I mean, like, a lot of the things we're talking about in the last video were coming to play. Like, they were working out, and like we saw Casey. And like I really liked Whipple's game plan in this game. We finally were seeing a little bit more of the dump offs, the easy passes, the screen passes to Anthony Grant that were working, and we're utilizing the sidelines well, and Vokalek finding success. Like, the things we really thought could happen in that game were happening in the first and second quarter. It all just went to the crapper.
I was blown. Illinois went even more defensive than I thought. They went single high safety, but that safety was like 25 yards back. They were terrified of the big play, and they wanted to keep everything in front of them, and that really opened up running lanes. Again, we saw Anthony Grant starting off with some really nice plays, a little dump off in the flat, and then a super solid run of like 11 yards, which was like, again, really exciting, where I'm like, if they do this because they're so scared of Trey Palmer, we're going to win this game. But again, the second that Chuba comes in, the safety drops, they're back to their normal defense, and there was no hope.
No. Well, the second you can't take the lid off of a team like Illinois, then they can just bunker down and you literally have no chance. So, on the offensive side, again, we're now back to dead last in the Power 5 and pass blocking efficiency on PFF. Are predestined where we are going to end up this season. But it's obviously been bad. But again, like, I thought Whipple finally started scheming in the things we needed to see earlier in the season. I'm just always so confused by, like, Whipple and his, like, lack of design to bust some of these blitzes. I was like so hyped to finally see some of that success in this game. On the defensive side, overall, we did a decent job, especially up until the turnovers started coming into play. But like,
the second Casey pick, so that second one, they just put him right in the red zone. Like, you just can't do that.
No, again, when you're gonna have like 4 turnovers against Illinois, you're not gonna win very many games. So
no, again, only 27.
Yeah, exactly. So even though like inherently the defense didn't look unbelievable, they did enough to give us a chance to win that game. Obviously we were right in at that point. It is interesting. I think even though we didn't see like great games from anyone specifically, we saw some improvement, I thought, from like Atiba Maga Clements, especially in the second half when he played more, and Garrett Nelson, I thought, had some good moments as well. But
I thought Buford also had a couple good plays.
Yes, Buford has some great plays, especially the trick like Chase Brown pass play where Buford just shot the gap and blew it up.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So I think we're seeing some improvement on the defensive side. That's probably where we have to like find our narrative of hope here over these next few weeks. As long as Casey's playing, we should have a chance.
If Chuba Purdy, I know they said he was hurt or whatnot, But if he looks any like that, I mean, we're just not going to score points. He was graded a 27 by PFF, and that's just not going to get the job done anywhere.
No.
And again, Logan Smothers was kind of more of a Scott Frost option project. I would hope that if Casey's not playing, that we could see him and see some packages of something like that.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
I mean, without some wrinkles and trickery, I don't think that we can beat this Minnesota team.
No. Yeah, so I guess we can kind of transition into the Minnesota game. So overall, it's going to be an interesting game. The line is tough, and it definitely reflects the odds of Casey Thompson not playing in this game. Right now, it opened up at minus 10.5, favoring Minnesota. It's now up to minus 16. So it's been bet up quite a bit. And the over-under's at a very low 45.5. So, it's expected to be a fairly low-scoring game here. But obviously, Minnesota's been a pretty respectable team. Like PFF has them at 24th right now, power ranked. Rest is at 81. Recently, they're 5-3 currently overall, 2-3 in the Big Ten. Tanner Morgan did get hurt in the middle of this thing, so that has to do with it a little bit. But they opened up really good, 34-7 against Michigan State. Lost to Purdue 20-10, then lost to Illinois 26-14. In that game, that was where Tanner Morgan got concussed in the fourth quarter. Then against Penn State, without Tanner Morgan, they kind of just got smoked, 45-17. Without Tanner Morgan, it makes sense they're going to have struggles and some turnovers. But then I think the line really reflects their performance against Rutgers last week, where they won 31-0, shutting them out in Minnesota. The important thing to note there is that it was only 14-0, with a few minutes into the fourth quarter. So PJ Fleck scored 10 points in the last 2 minutes. He just ran it up. The last one was without a doubt running up the score.
There was a minute 21 left, and this man, instead of just kneeling out on first down, which he could have, no. He just ran in a touchdown.
Because there was a turnover within the 10-yard line, around the 5-yard line, and instead of kneeling, he ran it. Wow, the savage. But so the Minnesota on the offensive side, what are your thoughts? Obviously, they got the 6th-year seniors, the returning players, a lot of experience there. What do you think about his offense?
Yeah, I mean, Tanner Morgan, we all know him at this point. He's been there for a decade and a half. He's about to retire his jersey. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's a solid QB, nothing like he was at his peak, I would say. But again, a lot of dink and dunk passes, a pretty accurate quarterback, 97-145, 1,286 yards, 7 touchdowns, but 5 interceptions this year, which is a little bit on the high side for him, which things we love to see. I know a lot of Minnesota fans have never heard of Tanner Morgan because there aren't any Minnesota fans, but for the ones out there, that's your quarterback. His name is Tanner Morgan, just for you guys to know. And then they also have a good running back, again, which Minnesota fans
who've been there
don't
forever.
know about. Mo Ibrahim, he's ran 170 times for 955 yards, 13 touchdowns, 5.6 a carry. Again, he is kind of, I worry about him a lot more than Tanner Morgan. He's been really solid again.
I mean, coming off an Achilles injury, jeez.
You got to root for him. He was, again, one of the more exciting backs in college football. And he looks really solid. It looks like he's starting to get that burst back a little bit too. In some of those games, he's starting to get return that breakaway speed. His vision's been there since he's been back.
Yeah.
So he'll definitely be a problem. I don't think watching the film, looks quite as good as Chase Brown to this point, but still a very, very good Big Ten running back.
They're different style runners. I mean, Chase Brown's got the speed on the edge, and he's really shifty. Ibrahim, it's vision and it's power and it's a balance and physicality. He likes to run between the tackles. He likes taking hits, and he likes getting 6 yards for a first down. I mean, they can grind the ball away all day long, and they do a lot of that behind their center, John Michael Schmitz, who's likely, or at least many think, to be a potential first-round talent this year in the NFL draft. He's been there forever as well. Him and Tanner Morgan have been a duo for a while. They have the 8th highest rush play percentage in the country. It's they run the ball 64.5% of the time or so. Ideally they want to get into 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2s, and then just run the ball again with Mo Ibrahim.
And it works pretty well.
It does.
That's the case.
I mean, they are they're literally the best offense in the country on 3rd down. They're first in the country with a 59.34% 3rd down conversion percentage. It's because they're always in 3rd and 2nd, or 3rd and 2s and 3rd and 1s, and they bring in 84 offensive linemen and then run the ball with Mo Ibrahim. That's all they want to do.
No, I don't know. I mean, I would love to take some of those 84 offensive linemen at this
just like
point.
one or two, come
just
on.
One or two. Like, that's all I ask for.
Yeah. So it is interesting. I mean, they're not going to blow your socks off as an offense, but their defense, keeps them in games, and then they don't beat themselves. And so, like, they're just not a very big play offense. Like, i.e., against Rutgers, they had a 19-play, 99-yard drive for a touchdown. Like, this is the type of offense we're playing against here. They're going to run, like, backdoor traps from shotgun. They're going to hand the ball to Mo Ibrahim. He's going to get 6 yards on first down, and then he's going to get 3 on second, and then he's going to get 4 on third. That's basically what we're looking at here.
Again, not like the other Minnesota teams that had some, like, really solid wide receiver weapons.
Yeah.
They've kind of been in a search and limbo for it.
Since the injury.
Brevin Spanford, their tight end, he's their leading guy. It makes sense. A tight end in the Big Ten would be their leading receiver.
Yep.
He has 27 catches for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chris Ottman-Bell was their leading wide receiver, but then he got hurt. So a huge hole for Minnesota, and again, makes their team a lot less exciting. And that's why they have some of those sustained drives. It's, Mohib, they know that they're going to run with Mo Ibrahim, and that still works a lot of the time for them.
Yeah.
But it is a lot more predictable. Again, Michael John Stevens is their leading wide receiver now with 19 catches for 311 yards. Again, just they're dink and dunk. They're not these big play guys, but if it was going to be a big play, it's going to be Mo Ibrahim.
Yeah, I mean, at wide, like, Daniel Jackson is probably the most talented wide receiver. At least he's the best, like, in contested catches, and we've seen that this year, like, against, like, the end zone fade touchdown versus MSU, and he's had some big time plays. So, but he's only had 18 catches for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's like they just don't throw the ball much, but when they do, they can still attack with, the tight ends and these like 8 or 9 yard out routes and little slants. They just dink and dunk, and they're effective with how they do it.
Yeah, and with Tanner Morgan being as accurate as he is, they don't need a ton of separation for them to get yards in the passing game. That's what's been really impressive. Again, just on those slant routes, them just not having, more than half a yard, and Tanner Morgan just be able to fit it in there, or some great touchdown fades too. Tanner Morgan's very effective at throwing those in single coverage, even down the sidelines as well. And again, that's kind of their bread and butter if it's a big play.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing to note though is that Tanner has had some issues this year with turnovers, like you mentioned. It'll be interesting to see exactly how often we can get Tanner Morgan to throw the ball. Obviously, their backup quarterback had some issues as well against Penn State, but Morgan will make mistakes, especially in like obvious passing situations. The problem is they're not in very many obvious passing situations. So that's what we're gonna have to try to figure out to dial up in this game. So on the defensive side, they got a really, really nice defense. I mean, they've been really effective this season. I mean, like right now, they're 4th in the country in points per game, 15 points per game allowed, and 23rd in yards per play at 4.9. And they're very good on third down as well on the defensive side, 7th in the country of opponents' third down conversion percentage, 27%. So they do a lot of really good things, and I think it's really highlighted by their secondary. Yeah,
their safeties are the best part of their team. Tyler Nubin is a playmaker in the secondary, very well-rounded player, and most possibly their most impactful player of the year.
Yeah,
he has 3 interceptions and a forced fumble. And then Jordan Howen is also a really good tackler and efficient in coverage. He has 2 interceptions.
Yeah, again, Nubin's great. I think like he has a legit shot at the NFL too. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with how he is. How I like a ball hawk, and seems to have really, really good football IQ back there. And so that's going to be something to watch for, especially if Casey's there with how we attack downfield. I mean, they love playing cover 2 and just having both of these guys blanket the secondary. And so it'll be interesting to see how we can find holes in that zone across the middle. Yeah, I mean, like at cornerback too, like their secondary is just really nice. Like they have both Justin Wally and Terrell Smith are both like really respectable and very well balanced corners, tackling and in coverage. And it's presented a lot of problems for teams trying to find ways to attack this, and it allows them to send blitzes and be really aggressive. And like up front, they love having like staggered fronts, like lining up, 6 or 7 on the line of scrimmage, and then really throwing different looks at you. Like they don't try to do too much too often. Sometimes they only have like 2 down linemen and really throw some interesting looks at you. So I really like their creativity. It's very NFL-like with how they line up and they like to align there. Even though on the surface, they generally just don't do too much. Oftentimes it's cover 2, maybe man on the outside, then zone across the middle, and pretty straightforward defensive bases overall.
Danny Strigo is one of their best edge rushers. He has 3.5 sacks on the season. Only player who has more than 1 sack on their team. So he's the one that we have to kind of scheme for and watch out for. Obviously, you know, it's nice that they really don't have like a crazy amount of sacks and they just kind of have this one great pass rusher. Obviously, off the edge is a danger for us, though, because, you know, our tackles aren't that great. So this will create issues.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're about to get into X factors here, but like I think it'll be interesting to see how much they blitz, because we know how tough it's been for offensive line to deal with any type of blitzing packages this season for sure. So like with that said, I think we can head into the X factors and kind of talk about some of these things for sure. So, I mean, for me off the rip, Travis Vokalek, I think, continues to improve. And again, he had that one big play in this last game, but obviously second half kind of neutralized because we couldn't throw the ball. But when Casey Thompson's there, I think Vokalek, we've continued to see that improvement and more impact that he's had this season. And this game is going to present an opportunity, and he might be the X factor in this game outside of like Trey Palmer on the outside one-on-ones. But assuming that they're going to shadow and shade Trey Palmer quite a bit in this game, then Vokalek's going to be the one having to split the gaps here up the seam and finding holes in the zone across the middle. And we've seen tight ends have success against Minnesota this season. So it's going to come down to, I think, what Vokalek can do and how we utilize him across the middle.
What's surprising with Minnesota is how many broken coverages that they had during the season, like especially against that Penn State game where a couple times where they just absolutely didn't mark a guy. And that's just something I haven't seen from PJ Fleck's Minnesota team in a while. So again, they're kind of young back there, and that creates some opportunities. And I think with Travis Vokalek and Trey Palmer, I mean, I think that is too much for them to handle as a defense.
Another one for me, at least on the defensive side for Nebraska, is like, I mean, if there's ever been a game to like force the weapons to beat you, again, I want to see us sell out here against the run and force these Minnesota weapons on the outside to beat us. Like Malcolm Hartzog and like Quentin Newsome, I think are decent enough matchups here where they could have some success in man and one-on-ones on the outside. And like, I genuinely would just be willing to force those guys to beat us at this point versus letting them ground and pound away with Mo Ibrahim every single down.
Yeah, it's going to take Reimer also being disciplined against Spanford. Again, last game, it was disappointing
the backside.
You know, he had some blown coverages where he's kind of supposed to, he sells out for the run, but it's actually a pass, and then, you know, big plays happen. So I think Reimer getting more disciplined, again, because he is our best coverage linebacker, that he needs to really be able to protect that backside, like you said, and rather, you know, a 3-yard run than, you know, a 15-yard pass play.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen the pros and cons of like Ernest Hausman in there instead of Nick Henrich. Like, yeah, he has more speed on the outside and he's a little bit more agile and a little bit better in open space, but we've seen the youthful aspects of Hausman where he really gets like sucked into play action and he's often out of position. And so those have been at least the big trade-offs versus Nick Henrich, and it's cost us on these play actions especially. So, I mean, Minnesota's like the team of RPO and play actions. So, I mean, yes, that's where the matchups are really scary.
They hold that option ball in there for like 10 seconds. It's so annoying.
It is.
Tanner Morgan's just holding it there. What are you going to do? What are you going to do, defensive end or linebacker? It's a painful. Yeah, so they're going to have to be disciplined.
Yeah, so at least for me, like the last X factor here is turnovers, obviously, like always, but in this game, like Minnesota's been pretty good this season in turnovers, especially like, you know, they're not fumbling the ball, like they're, you know, top 30, top 40 and like turnovers per game, and they're good at taking the ball away as well. Like they're 38th in takeaways per game, while Nebraska is 117th in giveaways per game. And I mean, it's easy to say,
it's
but
plagued us all year.
It's been a problem, and Casey's kind of been good for one really bad throw per game.
Yeah.
And he generally seems like he's trying to do a little bit too much. I'm really hoping that Whipple can cook up some like dump offs and just don't ask Casey to do too much. I think that's kind of the end all be all. The only other X factor I guess I can consider here is like right now Minnesota is actually opposing teams are pretty successful in the red zone against them, which is just strange considering the rest of their defense and how well they've played. But opponents have a 90.91% success rate in the red zone, which is 111th in the country. And Nebraska's been pretty good in the red zone so far this season. So that'll be something to watch, is if we can get down there, we can knock the ball in, then change the tides of the game a little bit here. So
Casey hinges this whole game, in my opinion.
Yes, exactly.
Like with Casey, it'll be a fun game, and I think it'll be exciting. Without Casey, is there even a chance?
Yeah. So I guess that's what we're going to talk about here in the predictions.
I've seen.
So what are your thoughts on this game? I think we can give two predictions. I mean, right now, Casey's a game time decision. And like I said, Mickey has said that Casey's trying to convince him to let him play. So I don't know. My gut would say Casey plays, but he has taken a few snaps in practice this week. It's hard to say. We just genuinely don't know. So with that said, like give us like 2 predictions, a Casey prediction and a no Casey prediction. Where you at this game?
With Casey, we win this game. I think that Minnesota is a less exciting Illinois. I think that Illinois has the better.
Yeah.
They both have 2 not great deep ball throwing quarterbacks. And also, a little bit more mobile in DeVito. We saw him beat us with like a couple times.
I would say it's Illinois' defense is the X factor.
Yeah, and Illinois has a way better defense with Witherspoon and those guys.
Better pass rush for sure. They match up way worse
better
against
pass
us.
rush. They got a better secondary. And, I'd say, kind of in the equal linebacking core stances. And I think Illinois even has a better linebacking core. So I think their defense is more beatable. And I think their offense is less dynamic and exciting because, you have to worry about with Illinois, we had to worry about Isaiah Williams and burners that could really beat us. And Minnesota, I'm not as scared of that. And again, they have a solid tight end, but every Big Ten team has a solid tight end that you kind of have to be aware of. That's just that's the Big Ten. So I think because of that, and I think of how well we were doing against Illinois, and again, just how dynamic our offense is and how much you have to respect, even with the terrible O-line, when you have a good QB and you have good weapons that are just outmatched. And then Anthony Grant, too, is just a great thing of like, you have to keep us honest. You can't just absolutely forget about the run, even though we don't have an offensive line. I think that's enough. And I think our defense, because this is a worse defense, I think that Mickey and Bush are going to be a little bit more prepared than Scott Frost has been for Minnesota. I think that, Minnesota, they do what they do on the tape. And if you watch it and if you
pretty
teach
straightforward.
I think it is really straightforward and rudimentary. They just,
but it works.
But yeah, it works because, they think that they're the more disciplined team. And again, that's a lot of Big Ten football as well. So I think with those 2 things, I think we could beat this team. But without, I think that Minnesota blows us out because of turnovers. We saw how bad Chubba Purdy was, and he gave up some bad ones. And then Smothers wasn't playing really. So I think it's like 34-3 without. I think that Minnesota runs it up because that's just the team they are and just who PJ Fleck is. And that is an awful person that PJ Fleck is. Goodness gracious. What a terrible guy.
Well, okay. So, I mean, I get what you're trying to say. Like when it comes to like Minnesota's rep this season, I mean, obviously like we have some similar opponents at this point. I mean, Purdue, Illinois, Rutgers. Minnesota lost to Purdue 20-10. They lost to Illinois 26-14. And
not a lot of offense.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to be positive or excited that, Minnesota only put up 10 points on Purdue when we put up 37.
When Purdue, it doesn't have a great defense. I mean, they were like respectably ranked and they had a solid pass rush.
Yeah.
Which is also an exciting thing of like, if we can get to the quarterback like Purdue did and we actually have a decent pass rush, like we can create lots of problems. That's where some of those turnovers come in.
Yeah, I mean, like, they put up 14 against Illinois. We had 9 in the first quarter and a half before, Casey's injury. And then Rutgers is the interesting one, I think. And we talked about earlier, they blew them out 31-0, but it was a very competitive game up until the middle of the fourth quarter. It was 14-0, and Rutgers had some real opportunities. They turned the ball over multiple times.
Yes. So, while driving.
Yeah. I can see the narrative. I mean, Rutgers had 3 turnovers in that game. Minnesota had 0. But I mean, Minnesota did dominate. I mean, they dominated the game. I mean, I think Minnesota had like 375 yards and 250 rushing. I mean, it was a pretty dominant performance from Minnesota, to say the least. But I agree. I think there's opportunities. And if Casey plays, I think this is an easy Nebraska pick of the line. The question is, can we actually win the game?
Well, 16, yeah.
I'm less optimistic. I think it's the running game matchup, in my opinion, because of how fundamentally well they block up front, is just a really bad matchup for us. They've done a really good job of keeping Tanner Morgan standing up, and Nebraska is now literally 124th in the country in sack percentage defensively. We are just not getting there. Maybe we're hurrying them, but we're not converting on sacks, and we're not hitting the quarterbacks. We're not really putting them on the ground. We're not intimidating the quarterbacks in any way. We're making it easy for them. And Tanner Morgan, when it's easy for him, is a really good quarterback. He's just not good at forcing it, and he's not good at creating the plays, but he's really good at taking what the defense gives him And generally, we give quarterbacks a lot. So like, that's why I'm a little bit worried that like overall, we're just not going to be able to stop them enough to win the game. So I would take Minnesota like 27-24 if Casey's playing, and probably like 24-7 if Casey is not playing. I agree. Like defensively, I mean, we're not going to have anything going if Casey doesn't play, because we need that deep threat to have any chance. I think the way we win this game is going to be the one-on-one matchups. It's going to be the different X factors of Trey Palmer and then Travis Voklik across the middle, and probably would require a few big dump off plays like what we saw against Illinois that go for like 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. And I really hope we start utilizing some more of these dump offs. So we'll see. I think we have a chance. I really do. But
yeah, as Mickey said this week, stars matter. And I think we have more than Minnesota. And it all depends if we have our star quarterback or not, and if we can get them the ball.
Yeah, agreed. So drop your comments down below. We appreciate you guys for checking this out and hanging with us. Obviously, love to see your predictions and everything you guys have to say. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload, and subscribe, because why would you ever want to miss one? But as always, guys, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This is Back to Sports, and we'll see you next time. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.